To put it into another perspective, Australia has by far the highest ratio in the entire world of arable land to population at around 1.9 arable hectares of land for every 1 citizen of the country. For the sake of comparison, the ratio in the United States is only about 0.47 arable hectares of land per 1 citizen. This means that if Australia ever reached the same ratio of arable land to people as the United States, the continent would be home to well over 90 million people, still substantially less than the population of America, but also substantially more people than Australia has today. In theory, Australia does have enough space and resources to support a lot more people than the 26 million who live there today. The big reason why it doesn't is because for pretty much the entire history of Australia, right up until the present day, it's just been a really tough place for anyone to actually get to. You see, for millions of years now, Australia has been effectively a lost continent, isolated from all the Earth's other major landmasses, drifting alone out in the sea. This has resulted in millions of years of completely separate evolution for the animals of the continent, which is why Australia is unique among Earth's continents for the fact that marsupials and not placental mammals dominate the indigenous mammal wildlife species. Modern humans first reached the continent sometime around 50,000 years ago, when the area's geography looked radically different than it does today. With sea levels significantly lower back then, humans were able to simply walk down the Sunda Peninsula, hop across just a few islands, and then make it into present-day New Guinea, which back then was connected to Australia via a land bridge as the prehistoric continent of Sahul. And after these initial humans made it to the continent, they remained almost entirely undisturbed for tens of thousands of years by any other groups of humans from anywhere in the outside world. As sea levels began to rise following the end of the last ice age, Sahul was flooded and the land bridge between New Guinea and Australia fell beneath the waves around 10,000 years ago, making Australia even more remote than it had been previously, and even less likely to ever be visited by outsiders. For the next 9,600 years before the eventual arrival of the Europeans in the 17th century, the Australian continent may have only been significantly visited and impacted by outside humans a total of just 2 times. Dingoes, an invasive species of dog likely originating from New Guinea, were introduced to Australia sometime around 8,300 years ago, potentially by an unknown group of human visitors coming from the island. About 11% of the modern Aboriginal Australian DNA also derives from Indians, which suggests a potential encounter on the continent with a group of humans from South Asia sometime around 4,000 years ago. And then, after millennia of existing almost entirely undisturbed by the outside world, in 1606, a Dutchman and his crew suddenly showed up on their ships and landed right here on the western side of the Cape York Peninsula. But even after that, the Dutch never really bothered to ever establish any permanent settlements or presence on the continent, because the parts of it that they found were generally decided to be too uninhabitable for all the reasons that I mentioned during the first half of this video. The closest the Dutch ever came to a permanent settlement on Australia happened entirely by accident. 50 years after their discovery in 1656, a Dutch ship called the Vergoel de Drieck crashed off the coast of Western Australia around here. 75 of the ship's survivors miraculously made it to the shore, and then 7 of them were dispatched on one of the ship's lifeboats to make the 1,400-mile-long journey over to Batavia, or modern-day Jakarta, on the island of Java, which was the administrative capital of colonial Dutch rule in Indonesia at the time. After 41 grueling days of travel, these 7 people finally made it to Batavia and raised the alarm for the 68 crew and passengers who they had left behind back in Australia.